Okay, well, in the interest of just making sure that everybody who is watching, I want to get started. I want to make sure we give you as much value in our hour as possible. So thanks everybody who's viewing so far. Feel free again to tweet with the hashtag Maves Meetup, or at me or Rory J.M. Green, who's also on the Google Hangout right now. So far I can just see Rory and Jeff, but I hear Larissa is watching, Andrew's watching. I know Paul Nazareth is watching as well. So we've definitely got some people engaged right now, and so I don't want to leave you hanging. So yeah, I'm Maeve Strathy, fundraiser Maeve, and I've been on Twitter for about 7 years now. 5 years on my current fundraiser Maeve account, and I've always found Twitter super fun, and I love using it, but I've started to get more intentional about it. And I've started to see the potential. I think that's why we're all here, because we know Twitter has a lot of potential, but we're just not quite sure how to use it to its full potential. Mm-hmm. Now, some people who I know who are really good at using it are watching and participating right now. And particularly, I invited my friends and connections, Rory Green, at Rory J.M. Green, aka Fundraiser Girl. She's here. Rory's waving. Say hello, Rory.
Hello, Rory. Hello, watchers.
And also at You Invited You, aka Paul Nazareth. So he's actually known as You Invited You first and Paul Nazareth second.
Totally.
But anyway, two people who I really admire on Twitter. We all have them, people that we watch and people who we see using Twitter strategically. And we want to see more of it. And we want to use more of it ourselves. And I've started to get some tips and tricks. And I figure all of us are really ready to hear those ourselves. So basically, that's the conversation I wanted to have. And although I'll be looking to Rory and Paul to once Paul gets online, I'll be directing a lot of questions towards them. But please jump in with questions yourself. There should be a question and answer toolbox on this Google Hangout. So if you see on the left-hand side of your screen, there's a Q&A box. And if you put questions through there, I'd be happy to direct those at Rory and Paul and anybody else so we can all participate. I just saw that Janice Cunning has joined us as well, so welcome, Janice. So anyway, direct your questions towards me, and we'll ask them. But I'm gonna get started with a question of mine, and I'll direct it to Rory to start since she's on. Rory, I get the sense from you, and I've heard you say this for yourself, that a lot of your tweets are scheduled. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to get kind of a basic sense of, what service you use, what you use it for, and how it helps you kind of stay connected to Twitter even when you don't have the time to be sitting in front of the computer or on your smartphone.
Yeah. So I think scheduling content is incredibly important for consistency. Paul talks a lot about how consistency is key, and I learned a lot about the importance of consistency from him. I use Buffer. I know Hootsuite's another really popular one, but the thing I like about Buffer is you can automatically tell it what times of day to post. Then you can automatically feed things into that pre-schedule. So I think with Hootsuite Free, you don't have the same functionality that you do with the basic Buffer. Hootsuite, you have to say, like, publish this tomorrow at 9 a.m., tomorrow at 10 a.m., tomorrow, and it's a lot more work. Whereas the free Buffer service, and I pay the $5 to get the Buffer Plus, you can schedule your tweets. You can say how many times a day, which days, when, and I just think that's so important. The other thing that's great with Buffer is if you're reading a great blog, it feeds right into your toolbar, and you can click a little button that says add this to your queue, and it automatically says, like, the name of the blog, the title. So it might say, like, 5 ways to keep your donors Agents of Good blog, and then it shortens the link, and you can automatically put that in your queue. The other cool thing you can do with Buffer is, let's say I'm having a Gail Perry day, and I've read 100 articles by Gail Perry, and I've put them all into my queue. I can then, shuffle it so that it's not, a week of Agents of Good, and then a week of Gail Perry, and then a week of Future Fundraising Now. You can have it shuffle it for you, so it's kind of mixing up your content. I also find that really helpful. If you, like, I have calls to action to subscribe to my newsletter or to check out that Fundraiser Girls on Facebook, and I can kind of schedule 10 of them and then have it shuffle, so it's not me saying subscribe to my newsletter like for 3 solid days saying nothing but that. So I think that Buffer is a really great service. Oh,
join us! Yay!
Yes!
Oh,
looking
classic.
So handsome. Look at that suit.
Thanks.
And of course, a pocket square. Thank you for having your pocket square with us as well.
I knew Jeff would be here.
So thanks for joining us, Paul. I'm sorry for anybody out there who's got some technical difficulties and is having trouble joining. It's a new technology for me as well, and it looks like most people are seeing the conversation happen. So I hope that that's adding value. But welcome to everybody who's joining. I saw we have Christine listening and Rebecca Broderick as well. So welcome to everybody. And again, I hope you can feed your questions to us either through Twitter or through the Google Hangout app as well. And Rory just finished telling us all about how great Buffer is as a service to help us manage our social media, specifically Twitter today we're talking about, but I know I've started using Buffer myself, and I've used it for LinkedIn and Facebook as well. So, and you can kind of share the one thing that you're posting on Twitter, you can copy it on over to LinkedIn as well and kind of modify it so it fits for the way you like to share information on LinkedIn. And that actually segues to a question I'll direct towards Paul this time, which is, Paul, how is Twitter different? I know you're a big LinkedIn user as well. How is Twitter different, and how do we make the tweets that we send out the most engaging for that specific platform?
Absolutely. Had a great bit of advice early on from our colleague Claire McDowell, who started working with charities and social media, now runs her own social media firm. And she really helped me to understand kind of the different voices that are there. I'll often describe LinkedIn as the conference and Twitter as the drinks after the conference. So it's still professional, it's still that tone that's professional, but it's a little bit more collegial, a little bit more casual. And if you're using it as a career development device or helping you with work or our work in fundraising, it's a lot about keeping it professional. LinkedIn is very much the business tone, the factual information, and Twitter can give you that casual element. Funny enough, as much as LinkedIn and the information sharing is powerful, and doing that on Twitter in a qualitative way is powerful, I still pick up and interact with more professionals and people I want to meet in my casual interaction on Twitter than anything else. So I'll meet more heads of fundraising on the live tweets that I do from Saturday Night Live at the Oscars than I do putting out to the latest Canada Revenue Agency data. They read the CRA tweets, but they engage with me on the personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's a great point you made, because initially I mentioned that I was on Twitter from 2008, but started Fundraiser Mave in 2010. And initially, I had 2 separate accounts, one that I felt was professional and one that was personal. And then I found that they both kind of merged together, and I've stuck with Fundraiser Mave. So I guess that's a good point about, and I guess it leads to a question about, is there kind of an etiquette, or is there, should you kind of try to stick with a certain topic for your tweets? Is there a way that you should kind of censor yourself, or not censor yourself, but kind of narrow your focus to be most engaging? Because that's sometimes I'm thinking, should I tweet mostly about fundraising and keep the personal stuff aside? What are your thoughts on that, Rory?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a big hybrid of personal and fundraising. I tweet very personal things about fundraising, which I don't know that a lot of people would do. I also, I'm as likely to tweet about, my name being misspelled at Starbucks as I am about, a great fundraising article. So for me, I think maybe for my generation, the lines are quite blurry. I made a joke once on Twitter. I don't know if anyone remembers the Heritage Minutes that the government used to put out, like the James Naismith Heritage Minute, or the one where, I smell burnt toast, doctor, and she's having the stroke and they fix her brain. And I just made like a glib remark about like, oh, I sure miss those Heritage Minutes in the Liberal government. And I was just like completely kidding. And someone was like, it's really inappropriate that you post political things on Facebook and on Twitter. So I am quite personal and professional on Twitter, and I agree with Paul that people actually respond better to the personal stuff that you share than necessarily the professional stuff. Fundraiser Girl has a Facebook page, and my most popular post lately is asking for people to share pictures of their cats. And people went nuts for it. I think I have like 50 comments of people sharing photos of their cats. So I think don't be afraid to post stuff on Twitter. I mean, if you're incredibly hungover or having problems in your marriage, maybe it's not the best forum. But if you want to talk about live tweeting the Oscars, you know, the things you like to do on your free time, I think absolutely go for it.
And you know what, on the internet, people constantly say that authenticity is the big thing. I think it's more about carrying through who you are in real life and who you are in that space. The tone needs to be the same. I have some colleagues who, in their context, in their community, in that part of the country, you know, swearing and being collegial is normal for them, and so that's kind of the tone they have, but it carries through to be authentic. So in a lot of ways, it's about continuing the tone that you would have offline. If I met you in person, you shouldn't be any different in that space. If you are someone who does self-censor at, say, a conference, and you wouldn't talk about politics at, say, a conference, but there are plenty of people out there, frankly, who are political fundraisers, and it's normal. One of the things that I like to do and I've developed over time is actually a warning and a welcome to new Twitter followers. So I actually use a blog post to say, here's what you can expect from me here on Twitter, just so you know, these are my kind of political areas, etc., that you can expect, and if there's any problem with that, right away off the bat you know and you can unfollow. So I put that out probably once every couple days to new followers.
And what I'll say too, I just saw a great video on the science of persuasion, and it talked about likability, and it cited a study at Harvard Business School where they had two groups of people negotiating and trying to come to a deal and trying to come to an agreement. And in the first group, they told the people, time is money, get down to business and get this deal hammered out as fast as you can. And they told the other group of people, chat, get to know each other, identify at least 5 things you have in common before you start negotiating. And the group that chatted was much more successful and much more likely to reach a successful conclusion to the negotiation than the people that got right down to business. So I think there's a powerful, if you're using Twitter to find new clients or to find, you know, a new job, that personal aspect is actually quite important.
Absolutely, and on Paul's point about authenticity, I mean, we talk a lot when we're talking about Twitter about how companies shouldn't have necessarily a company Twitter page, but at least one personed by somebody with a, you know, rather than Laurier, for example, where I work, having a Wilfrid Laurier University page, they could have Maeve from Laurier, and that there's kind of a person attached to it. And so if you're not coming off personally, then you're kind of missing out on showing that authenticity and that human side of yourself, which I think adds a lot of value. So I can understand why, in my own personal experience, I saw those two Twitter accounts merge because I realized that there was a lot of engagement to happen when I let, you know, Maeve as much as fundraiser Maeve out, and they kind of became one and the same. And on that note, you know, what you've talked a little bit about what you see the most engagement with. It's when you let that person out and talk about the personal stuff rather than just the business. But what makes a tweet most engaging? What have you seen? What kinds of tweets? What should you include? Different things that get engagement, whether it's in replies, retweets, favorites, or however you might measure that.
The tough question is what's engagement? So I'll get a lot of people judge their engagement by their number of followers, by retweets, by favorites. But the challenge on Twitter is you got a lot of lurkers, and that's a great thing. Because in the professional world, there's a lot of people who don't know what this is yet. It still makes them a bit professionally nervous. I had somebody come up to me a couple weeks back at a funeral and said, "You're Paul Nazareth from Twitter." I said, "Yes, Twitter, that's where I'm from." But it was surprising because this person said, "I want you to know, I would have loved to reach out to you. You don't know who I am. My Twitter handle profile is my dog. But I'm actually in the justice system. And I can't make connections or disclose or discuss, but these certain things that you talk about, in our case, in philanthropy, in Canadian volunteerism, is really helpful." So, you know, if engagement of people, if the numbers and the social side is your aim, definitely you want to study all of the times to tweet all of that. But if you are really using it for professional purposes and you continue a professional voice, those followers are going to come to you too. And wonderfully enough, over time, they will disclose who they are, and it can be really effective. There's a lot of senior leaders out there with a pizza box as an avatar.
So just jumping off of that, I'd say I swear I'm not working for Buffer. But the second you asked me that question, Maeve, I went to Buffer, and it tells me what my most popular tweets are. I can sort it based on retweet, based on likes, based on clicks. For me, clicks is what I'm most interested in, because when I tweet something out, what I want is for that person to go to that link that I'm sharing. So there's a lot of best practices for what makes a tweet good. And what I'd say is you need to test that for yourself. You need to try different things. You need to pay attention to your analytics, pay attention to what's working, and repeat the things that are doing well. So looking for me, the things that work well, my top tweet by far was, which fundraising Disney princess are you? I'm a big studier of BuzzFeed, of Upworthy, of the way they package content, of the way clickbait, kind of as it's called, the lessons of clickbait. Gail Perry does a really great job of it. Like, Gail Perry's always doing, like, 5 secrets to close that major gift. Like, of course I want to know 5 secrets to close a gift. 16 ways to land a meeting with a mega millionaire. Like, yes, please, let me click on that. What I also find really popular is kind of teasing in the tweet. So I had one that was, this organization sent me an email receipt, you won't believe what happened next. And the picture is kind of a woman gasping and looking at a check. That one did really, really well. And then the 2 I've guest blogged for you, Maeve, the 5 TED Talks all nonprofit leaders should watch, and it has a quote spec'd to the 2-to-1 Twitter ratio, so it shows up the Susan Cain quote. That one was quite popular. And the 5 fundraising lessons I learned from Beyonce is really popular. And again, I created a custom image with Beyonce. Beyonce's looking right at the camera, kind of making a surprised face. Like, even if you don't want to learn 5 things about fundraising, like, I can't imagine looking at Beyonce's face and not wanting to click that link and learn more. So those are the things I find, for my audience, tends to do really well. But for Paul's audience, it could be completely different.
But one of the things you touched on was images. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of for me, I'm trying to reach quite a number of chief financial officers, the business leadership of organizations. So they love their graphs. They love their infographics, right? So images, no matter what, are probably one of the biggest things driving traffic right now. And as much as the content has to be there, and again, both of us do this, virtually nothing's coming out of our Twitter accounts that is not social without a link to value, but still one of the biggest drivers is images.
And images with text can be really, really powerful too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been learning from both of you, is to have that, it is not really a call to action, but something additional that that somebody can look at or click to, and that definitely adds some engagement. I've got a question from Larissa Stoddart, who's watching. I know Larissa from Western, so thanks for joining us, Larissa. And Larissa's asking, what are people's thoughts about tweeting for donors versus fellow fundraisers? So putting having the messages out there targeted towards potential donors or people you've connected with versus your fellow fundraisers, your professional network. And the example that Larissa offers is, are donors put off when they see one of our tweets, let's say, that talks about donor segmentation? So, talking about the area we work in, would that turn them off at all? So, Paul, what do you think of that?
There's 2 parts there. One, I do believe that organizations and even fundraising offices, they should be having their own accounts. For years, it was just the organization that had its own account. I think either the fundraising team, or there has to be an account there to help donors, one, get served, because of course every major institution, banks, etc., has a customer service account. Maybe we need more donor service accounts. But in a world of transparency, clients want to know more about companies. Well, donors want to know about charities and fundraising, and a lot of them follow us to get into that, right? So for some years back, I had somebody who was looking to create a foundation that found me through Twitter and followed those kind of philanthropic education tweets and reached out through that space to start talking about the donation. So, as long as we're transparent, if anything, I've had more donors comment on how much they find it refreshing that fundraisers are being transparent about strategy, about service, then they're engaging in that way too. But that's, again, we need to give them a place to follow. Sometimes they follow fundraisers because the actual organization doesn't have an active account. And people who don't want someone to follow them in a space like Twitter can redirect the people to those organizations' accounts.
That is I'm afraid I don't have a great answer to that question. I remember sitting in a Gail Perry session on how to charm major gift prospects and live tweeting it, and a fundraiser Beth Ann Locke sitting next to me, and we kind of looked at each other and was like, if any of our major donors are following us, it's like, this is how the sausage gets made, right? Like this, no one ever wants to see how the sausage gets made, and I'm laying out like all the things I do to seem charming and friendly, and like I put it all out there on Fundraiser Girl. It hasn't ever been an issue yet. I do have some kind of donors that are my age that follow me on Twitter, and they get a huge kick out of it. I think everything I share comes from a place of I respect donors, I respect fundraisers, I love this profession. I have an honest desire to help other people in this profession. I have an honest love of donors. I have a true respect for them. So anything that comes from that place, even if it's a little cheeky, even if it's a little, you know, behind the scenes, it is what it is. Now, I don't share a lot of stuff on LinkedIn because I have a tremendous amount of donors on LinkedIn. I find most of my major gift prospects are not on Twitter, don't even really know what Twitter is, but are on LinkedIn. So I censor myself quite a bit on LinkedIn.
What's interesting, too, though, is that in 2015, I've almost never met a high-level donor who is not a board member of another charity and a fundraiser for another cause. So one of the things that actually I find a lot of the donors following for is they're saying, I want right into that sausage factory. I want to be picking up all the tips that professional fundraisers learn, because I'm trying to not just give to the charity I love, but I'm trying to get the education for other causes that I care about so that I can bring this education to other spaces. In fact, now I've got more of them who I know from the donor world who are asking me things for their boards and asking for information for the causes that they're raising funds for. So again, it's another kind of transparency piece. People want in, we're happy to invite them in, and the more transparency, the more that people are getting from it. And if it makes them a donor too, all the better.
Great answers. And in terms of Larissa, she's already tweeted and is thrilled by that. So thank you, Paul and Rory, for your thoughts. And Jeff, who is the only one aside from the three of us that we see on screen, looking good with his earphones on. I see a question from you on Twitter too, and you asked how do the native Twitter analytics that he uses compare to others like Buffer? And since you've been singing the praises of Buffer, Rory, why don't you share a little? How do they add value compared to the kind of native regular ones on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super familiar with the basic features of Twitter. I mean, I know you can go tweet by tweet and see how they do, which frankly I do not have the time to do, and they send you a weekly roundup, which, I mean, God, another email that gets lost and I forget about it. The thing about the Buffer is it's right there when I want it. You can sort them really easily by you know, what had the most retweets, what had the most clicks, what had the most likes, what had the most reach, what had the most favorites, and then you can, the most popular stuff, you can, with the click of a button, throw it back into your queue. So you can, you know, you have to share things a couple times on Twitter for it to hit your whole demographic. I think people recommend you share things on Twitter maybe 3 to 5 times, whereas post it on Facebook just once. So it's got a really easy functionality in terms of repeating what works. Yeah, so I find I like that. You can set different time parameters on it, so it was the most popular thing this month, this year, the last 3 years. I quite like it.
Excellent. And I've started using Buffer at Rory's recommendation, and within, I think, less than a day of using it, I bought the paid option because I found so much value so fast. The rebuffer option is definitely a big one that I use when I'm kind of filling in what to use for that day in my queue. I'll go, and it actually labels in blue top tweet, so you can scroll through the past couple of days and then, you know, rebuffer a couple of those since they resonated, and you can share them further. So I find it to be a great service. Again, if people are using Hootsuite or anything else, I think Paul just tweeted, or Jeff just tweeted that he uses analytics.twitter.com for his analytics. So there's obviously lots of different ways you can find out the value of your tweets. But one question that I really wanted to know, and I've got a better sense of it now, but I'd love to know for both of you, Rory and Paul, starting with Paul, how many tweets do you like to put out a day? What are you aiming for each day in terms of number of shares?
Well, you know what? I'm never aiming for a number. For me, it's really about what's the kind of value in things that I'm trying to put out. A lot of times for me, it's about spacing out content. So very often I'm reusing content depending on the groups that I'm trying to reach. And I have a very strong mental image of the groups that I'm trying to reach. So for me, there is a group of donors, and I know when they read. There's a group of fundraisers, and I know when they read. Entrepreneurs, etc. So very often I'm using one thing to speak to 5 different people 5 different ways. And I know when they're reading, weekday morning, afternoon, evening, weekend, etc. And it's more about spacing it out so that those times when I know those groups are reading the most, those times are full of what they want to be reading. So you'll see for me things like mornings, just after lunch, evening between, say, 6 and 9, and weekends between certain times. I've got whole groups kind of put out because I've seen the feedback from the people I'm trying to reach the most. I can see that they're reading at those times. You were just talking about platforms as well. I'll throw in there that I'm still very much a TweetDeck user, and they've advanced some of their uses for some of my scheduling. But I use Hootsuite specifically to listen, because with Hootsuite you can set up vast listening posts. I've got a listening post with probably about maybe 400 or 500 different sets of tabs, listening to colleagues and peers and different organizations on topics. When I'm listening to a conference, I'm listening to all at once the speakers, the people there, even the venue. The concept to immerse yourself in something using Hootsuite is really positive.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I didn't used to have a set amount of tweets a day. And then I got some advice from someone, you should tweet 15 times a day. So I started doing that, and I got a lot of comments that I was tweeting too much, and people were finding it annoying, which I don't always get, just don't look. I don't know. Anyway, so I've scaled it back down to 6 a day, 6 scheduled tweets a day, Monday to Friday. I find none of my audience engages with me on Saturday and Sunday. The analytics for my website are basically nothing. I get very little return on tweets. I get no engagement on Facebook. People are not, this is, my content is stuff people are doing when they have a cup of coffee, close the door of their office, like their boss is being a jerk, time for some fundraiser girl. So I have 6 scheduled tweets a day, and then I normally organically put maybe 2 to 3 things out a day. So around 10 a day is kind of what I go for. But obviously if I'm having a Twitter conversation or if I'm at a conference, there'd be quite a bit more.
That makes sense.
And when I tweet, I've just tweeted out a Bloomerang article called "Find Out When Your Nonprofit Should Tweet," and you can sign up for it hooks again Buffer. Take a shot every time I mention Buffer, I swear. It hooks up with Moz, and it analyzes your Twitter feed, and it tells you based on your audience what times of day you should tweet and recommends. And then you say, okay, based on my audience, if I want to tweet 10 times a day or 3 times a day or once a day, and then it automatically sets up your buffer schedule to coincide with the best times of day to tweet based on when your audience responds to things.
And it's brilliant. And I was going to ask about what the best times of day to tweet are, but you've made it clear that it's really dependent on who your audience is. And Rory, again, had recommended that article to me, which is what got me started on Buffer. And I've actually gone back to the article a few times since I got started on Buffer and entered in a new number of times that I'd like to tweet a day and updated it, because it's all about who you follow and when they're on and when they're engaging. So that's a big part of it, and that will change over time. So the number of times and when I tweet right now may be different from what I'm going to be doing, even a couple months down the line as I continue to kind of bring more people on. Because I would say I'm in pretty early stages of intentional Twitter use. But what you're sharing is absolutely incredible. Everybody on Twitter right now, because of course we're talking about Twitter and people are engaging on Twitter with us. Everybody's really enjoying it. And something I wanted to talk about is how you've found, and we've talked about it a little bit, but how you found value in your career through Twitter. and we've both shared a couple anecdotes so far. But I think that's one of the big things is I've had people come up to me at conferences and say, I recognize you from Twitter. And the fact that there's kind of a warm welcome for that reason has really been great for me to kind of build that network. But what have you both seen in your careers, starting with Paul?
Well, there's a couple different points. One is the ability to influence, to listen, to engage. You know, a perfect example is you go to a conference and there's a great speaker there, and after they finish talking, the whole crowd rushes them. And often half of the people just heard that person for the first time. And one of the ways that I get some time with that individual is I'm tweeting about them and their content, if I love it, a month before the conference. And so that by the time the conference comes around, not only do I not have to walk up and fight 1,000 people for that person's time, I've already set up a coffee with that person after the session. You have the ability to pre-network situations. You know, for now, when I'm going to a networking event, we're talking about it on Twitter before, we're organizing rides to and from, we're making sure that while we're there, we're meeting different people, we're making connections before and in the room. It adds a whole other level to networking. And of course, for career development and personal development, if you have the kind of people, and I've given myself permission to say, I'm not going to work with people, for people, or around people that don't value that digital connection, the network concept. I'm now doing the digital team. My leadership and the people above me use it and value it, and it adds added a wonderful dimension to my life. I know that they see the benefits of it, they engage on it, we can find each other and talk and have a whole other level of engagement, especially in a world where we're all working so much. The ability to have a bit of social, a bit of personal element there is wonderful.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from Paul about how to use Twitter to build relationships with people you might never have gotten the chance to. Like if you read a book that you love, how to connect with that author and have a conversation about that book. For me personally, Twitter has helped me form a network of people who I now consider friends more than necessarily colleagues. Maeve, I'd consider you one of them, and Paul, I don't know that we'd be as close and as open with each other if it wasn't for social media. In fact, you know, I live in Vancouver, and I find there's a lot of great fundraisers in Toronto, and if it wasn't for Twitter, I wouldn't be able to keep up with them and keep in touch with them in the same way. One of my very good friends, fundraiser Beth, people always joke, like, how did you guys meet? We met online. We met on Twitter. She tweeted me, I tweeted her back, she sent me a card, I said, this is amazing, let's get lunch, and she's such a wonderful person, and I'm so lucky that she's in my life. So I've built this amazing network of people that I truly care about as people, not just as professional colleagues, and largely it's because of Twitter that I've found them. I'm in touch with a young woman in London, her name's Laura, and she's so inspiring and so passionate about fundraising, and you know, we're great friends now, and I'm just so glad that we've come into each other's lives, and it was all through Twitter. The other thing I'll say that I find so helpful is anytime I have a problem, if I'm doing an employee giving campaign, or I want tips on the best way to get a meeting with a prospect, or I want examples of innovative corporate partnerships from all over the world, one tweet and I have so many opinions from so many interesting different places coming in. I did a blog recently on whether or not you should pursue your CFRE, and getting information from Twitter and following up and having offline conversations was such a great way to gather a tremendous amount of information that otherwise I just wouldn't have had.
Absolutely. I think you both hit on it, and one of the things that I think about a lot after having heard about the concept of trust agents is that, you know, we're not going to go to the library necessarily to find out how to do our next email campaign. We're going to want to go to somebody who we trust and who we know and who we respect. And often we find a lot of those relationships on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on other social media. So for me, it's kind of having this sounding board, like you, Rory, that you've alluded to, of people that you trust and respect, who you know they know what they're doing, and you can kind of put anything out there and very quickly get something back. In my blog for whatgivesphilanthropy.com, I use Twitter constantly, and not just to promote, but to invite people like Rory. That's how we first connected, to join and write a guest blog post. Somebody tweets at me and says that they liked a recent blog post on my blog, I'll tweet back and say, amazing, would you like to write one yourself? And a lot of times people have just been waiting for that invitation. So it's this really incredible way to create a network. And I mean, I wouldn't be chatting with anybody, almost anybody who's on this Google Hangout tonight, if it weren't for connections that we made on Twitter. So, this is kind of happening because of that. And speaking of Twitter, obviously, we've continued to get lots of questions online. So another one that I got from Paul Laffin, who's watching. Thanks, Paul, for being here. He asks if Twitter is set to replace e-blasts as a means of engaging donors and soliciting gifts. And that's something I wasn't sure if we talk about, but being that there's a lot of fundraisers on the Hangout, what do you think? Does Twitter have that potential?
No, I don't think so at all. So we're doing right now, Maeve and I, a free event in Waterloo. Sorry, I'm just getting my lamp is weird. We're doing a free event, and it's about donor love, and John Lepp and Jen Love are doing it with us. And I've done a couple free breakfast seminar type things here in Vancouver. I did a meetup with Paul in Toronto. I find I could tweet it 100,000 times, and the number of people that will actually click and actually register are like slim to none. I get the most people responding to my call to action of register and come to this event through emails, especially when they're personalized, through one-on-one Facebook requests. And what that tells me is that blanket tweeting, donate to my charity, I have to imagine that similarly, you have to tweet that a whole bunch of times to raise the amount of money as an email, and you have to send out a whole lot of email to raise as much money as direct mail, just like you have to send a lot of direct mail to raise as much money as face-to-face asks, right? So I cannot imagine a future where Twitter replaces any kind of fundraising channel.
Agree 100%. And again, Canada Helps is a digital charity, and we have all the buttons in the world that we know if the charity's not telling stories, not engaging donors, they're not coming online looking for a tweet that says give. They already knew they were going to give. It's the storytelling, it's the engagement, it's the relationship building. But they are absolutely used in unison. Experts like the Agents of Good, like Good Works, and the people who do digital strategy, Stephen Thomas, all those folks know that direct mail is still that anchor piece. Email is the new storytelling on direct mail, but all these things are just another added dimension. They're a way to continue to drive and find your way to the clicks, but the home base is still that email piece. The top dollars raised is still that. So it's important that all digital is still an anchor too, and it's traffic going back and forth, but the anchors are still the same.
I've got to say it's a bit of a relief as a professional fundraiser to know that there's obviously, and not to say that I was worried, but there's obviously so much value in what we're actually doing. And I've definitely seen Twitter. I've used it more personally, professionally, if that makes sense. Not for the services that I'm putting out there, but to gain knowledge and to gain connections and I think that at the end of the day, that really benefits the work that I do as well. Not just kind of in a selfish way advancing my career, but in being able to come back to staff meetings and say, well, I got this link from Rory Green on Twitter, and that this applies to this situation because, I've definitely had a lot of those moments. And I think, well, this kind of draws back to what we were talking about before, but I'm curious of your thoughts. Some people have asked me before if my blog, how it's looked at by my employers and whether they see it as an advantage or not. I see Paul and Rory smiling and nodding, so I know you understand. And personally, I haven't, so I'm lucky. In fact, I remember when my current position was announced to the people at Laurier that my blog was included in that announcement, that she also kind of holds this blog. So I saw that as indicating that the team there feels value in the network that I've created for myself and that my team at Laurier can benefit from. But have you ever gotten that feedback or questions from fellow fundraisers or professionals about that and the threat that there might be? Rory, do you want to get started on that one?
Sure. So, God, again, I'm realizing how much I've learned from Paul over the years. I think it's really important for everyone watching and everyone in the fundraising profession to really know yourself. Know that authentic self that you are. Know what your strengths are. Know what your weaknesses. And once you know yourself, you can know what is it I need in a workplace. What is it I need from a boss? What does I need from a culture to truly be happy and thrive? And I am a cheeky person who likes to laugh at things, who doesn't take anything too seriously. I work hard, but I need to be able to laugh things off. I could not work and be successful and be happy in an organization that discouraged me from doing Fundraiser Girl. My current boss was one of the first people I sent the website to long before I ever worked for her. She sends me guest posts from time to time. She has a Fundraiser Girl pin in her office because she has a great sense of humor too, and that, for me, that's really important. So I could never and will never go somewhere where I would be told you can't do your blog, because that says something about the culture of where that place is. It has never come up as an issue for me in the past. That said, I know so many fundraisers who've been told, who write blogs about fundraising, who've been told by their bosses, don't you ever talk about this organization or things that are happening here. I mean, obviously, none of us would ever name donor names, but have really had that hammer fall down hard on them. And for me, I think I just know that I would never really truly be successful in an organization where that was the culture.
And I have had that challenge in previous roles, and that's one of the reasons why my Twitter handle is not my name. Because when I started a number of years ago, it was still seen as unprofessional or negative. And so I said, fine, like so many people out there, I had to hide it. And for the first 2 years I was on Twitter. In fact, it was John Lepp who convinced me to join Twitter with the phrase, you don't have to say anything. And that really shocked me. I said, isn't that kind of the point? He said, nope, you can just listen. And so wonderfully enough, in my role with a lot of professional advisors, law, financial planning, insurance, accounting, there's a ton of them I have on there to say, look, Canada Revenue Agency is tweeting. The finance minister is live tweeting the budget. You got lawyers who are experts in charity. While we've been talking tonight, I've got 2 accountants who've been tweeting me in the direct message feature asking about 2 charity questions because they have clients who are going to give, and they're going to give before midnight tonight. And so, wonderfully enough, we've got more people who have come into this space, understand the value now, but there's still a lot that don't. And like Rory said, sometimes it's giving yourself permission to say, I've come this far. There's a full world out there of people that don't want to join. That's fine. But I have to give myself permission to say, I will only exist in an environment of people that understand how this is a benefit. And one of the things that convinced me to join the current organization I'm with is our CEO, doesn't just have a blog and writes columns, but they use everything right down to LinkedIn blogging to teach and coach their network. And that showed me this is a person that understands that opportunity. Well
put. I mean, I'm realizing so much throughout this that there's not really a best practice in many ways. I mean, we can look at lists with suggestions, but so much of our Twitter use, I'm hearing from both of you, is personal, based on the networks we have, based on the values that we hold, based on who we are and who we want to connect with and where we want to go. So I love how individualized it is, because although that makes it difficult for some of us to not kind of have a help me Twitter kit, we definitely need to kind of discover that through our own processes, and I'm discovering that myself. But it's good to have people to connect with, like the people who are tweeting tonight, and Rory and Paul who are sharing their advice tonight, and I'm so grateful for it. With about 10 minutes left, I'm asking to see if there's more questions out there. There's lots of people engaging on Twitter and sharing quotes of what you both are sharing, so we're definitely getting lots of engagement.
Jump in with what you just said before you get on to the next question. I think it really boils down to who are you? What are you good at? What do you have to offer other people? How is it you can put a bit of yourself into the online space that will help improve the lives of others? Paul does that in such an incredible way, in so many ways. There's so many great things about Paul that he puts out about himself to help other people. So you're absolutely right. There's no one-size-fits-all way to do anything in life, really. It comes down to know yourself, know what it is you offer, know what it is that makes you happy, and find ways to put that out in the world and help other people, and you're going to find success.
Love that. I'm glad that this is going to be uploaded to YouTube after, because we've got a lot of gems in this conversation, as long as I eliminate the technical difficulties from the beginning. No, you're so right, and so I hope everybody is getting some sense of that tonight, and that there's going to be a little. You're going to have to do a little introspection to see what's going to work for you best, but also. I'm big on the, test and try and give it a shot model. You're not going to come out and get everything right from the get-go, and you're going to learn a lot. And, it's tough that tweets are fleeting, but it's kind of good too, because if you've got a few duds now and again, there's nothing wrong with that. So don't expect everything to get tons of favorites. I recently did a little guest lecture at University of Waterloo on blogging. And one of the things that I said was that I rarely get comments on my blog. And that's not anything to be concerned about. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I've read articles and not engaged with them in any particular way. Like Paul says, there's a lot of lurkers. You don't necessarily know that they're there, but they're there. So just put stuff out and see how it's working for you. Now, I didn't want to keep everybody too long, although I'm feeling that everybody's getting a lot from this, which I'm so thrilled about. But with about 10 minutes to go, I'd love to hear from Rory and Paul, kind of some of your, sorry to put you on the spot, but some of your kind of top 3 lessons about Twitter that maybe you haven't shared, or just some further advice, things that have kind of pushed you along in your Twitter adventure.
Sure, I'll jump in. And I just wrote something. I'm constantly trying to evangelize on Twitter for professionals, not just fundraising professionals, but in the accounting profession, the legal profession, where I'm speaking with a whole bunch of lawyers in a couple months at a national conference of estate planning professionals tied to plan giving, but specifically on the value of social media and Twitter, because the public is out there, they're listening, they're looking. They want to learn. They want to engage. You talk about people not commenting on the posts, but every once in a while, when I'm talking about something you wrote with a senior professional, and they'll always say, "Oh yeah, I've read that," and it's surprising how many of them are reading what's out there. They may not be commenting, but they are absolutely paying attention. So that's the big thing: is continue to be you, but also to know that it's time to step your game up, to not just engage, but maybe create some sort of a platform. To do something like a blog, and again, fixate on the media that you're comfortable with. Are you a video person? Are you an Instagram person? Are you a blogger? So you stick with the medium. You can't do it all. It could be Pinterest, it could be Instagram, it could be Vine, but do 1 or 2 things well, stick with them, and grow that network out there, and people will follow you because of it. Rory's a perfect example of this. Fundraiser Girl is now international. And if you are true to yourself and go for the places that are painful, Fundraising Girl is a catharsis for the profession across the world. I had a senior person who raises $100 million admit to me that every once in a while, they're in the washroom at a conference just ready to go nuts, and they're laughing at a post. And I thought, wow, we've come a long way with something like that. But they're listening, they're engaging, and it totally plays out too. With our careers, with the work we do, and again, even with donors.
And I guess in the spirit of numbered things, I say I'll give you 3. Be thoughtful and strategic, like Paul said. It's not going to happen accidentally. Do things and think about them and pay attention and look at what's working and look at what's not working. 2, we haven't really talked about this, but I think it's really important to know your audience, to know who they are, where they are, when they're awake, what they're responding to, how old they are, if you can, what gender they are, what career are they in, like who is the people who are responding to what you have to say. Because the better you know your audience, on to point number 3, you should strive to do things that give value to your audience. Everything I find that is most successful is things that I'm doing that I know will bring a smile to someone who follows me or help them do their job a little bit better. So if you're coming from a place of truly knowing who your audience is and doing things to make their lives or their jobs or their efforts as a fundraiser a little bit easier, it is going to resonate well and you're going to build a great community. I had someone email me the other day. She is a new fundraiser at a small shop. She used to be at a big shop, and she said, reading your blog, it's like I get to stand around the water cooler again and talk to my colleagues. And that was so wonderful for me to hear, because there was a time 2 years ago where I was terrified to start it because I thought no one would like it and no one would read it. So put yourself out there, and it's the most amazing things can happen when you do.
I really love that thing that you mentioned, Rory, the water cooler. I think that's in some ways what Twitter really is. It's the return to engagement, but it gives us the ability not just to do it in our office, but in all offices the world over. And it's something that's disappeared from our offices, not just in a virtual world, but in a world of too busy. So people can't do that physically anymore, but this gives us the ability to do it. And it's on your time. It's day, night, wherever, and it's private. So that's the thing I think people really enjoy.
Absolutely. Now we've had a couple questions. That would have been a good place to stop, but we've got a couple questions left. And Andrew Littlefield, FSU Andrew on Twitter, who's doing some great things. So keep an eye out for what Andrew has coming out. Rory and I are definitely interested. But Andrew's asking, what charities do you feel do an amazing job on Twitter? So who's really nailed it? And I would open that up to say maybe you could both share a couple individuals or charities or both that are really great, and we should follow and be inspired by.
Do you want to go first, Paul?
You go for it.
Okay. I guess the first thing I'll say is that personally, I actually think Facebook is maybe a slightly better place for charities to be engaging their followers in social media because you have more length to tell a story, you have more options with photos. So I'm going to not quite answer your question and instead give you two charities that I think are doing a phenomenal job on Facebook. One is VOKRA, V-O-K-R-A, which is Vancouver Orphan Rescue Kittens Association, and they share like a post written in the voice of a cat that's been rescued from being under a car, with photos of the cat and then a call to donate, and they get like hundreds of shares and retweets, and it's a tiny little nonprofit with no paid staff. And why they're doing such a great job is they're telling stories. They give all the credit to saving the cat to you, the reader, the donor who's contributed to VOKRA. The BC SPCA also, they do a great job on Twitter, but they really shine on Facebook. I've tweeted photos of my grandmother's cat and tweeted them to the SPCA, and they'll back and forth me, and I'll have I feel like a personal connection with their social media brand.
Amazing. What about you, Paul?
Well, there's a great small nonprofit called Not Far From the Tree, and they are having some incredible engagement. In fact, they were just featured at Claire McDowell and Be Good Be Social team there. They're just, they're unbelievably engaging, and they're supportive of their donors. They do really wonderful donor love programs, and that's why they often get a lot of, and bring on new donors. They're one of the few people that's actually doing really cold acquisition on Twitter because they are engaging, and they're creating happiness, delight, joy. It's funny that Rory mentioned the folks at VOKRA. They're in Vancouver, across the entire country from me. And I know them and follow them and see their wonderful work, refer people to them because they mix both the playful tone, the cause tone, and the teaching tone. That's another one to remember as well, that we need to teach people how to engage with the work that we do. We can't assume out there that everybody is an established donor or supporter. I'm a big fan of the individual teachers. In the fundraising world, you've got people like John Lepp and Claire McDowell, Leah Eustace. I'll tweet some of these out so people can follow them. But one of the things that's really helped me is following some of the people in the business world who are thinking far ahead on this. First and foremost among them, Don Tapscott, who's been named as one of the Globe's best thinkers in this. He's a thinker on a digital economy. And then as well, Canada's influencer-in-chief, Terry O'Reilly, who's the CBC show Under the Influence. Teaches about that, often includes the fundraising world. It helps us understand how does it all track back. This is absolutely about our work and business and our careers. Yes, we're allowed to have fun when doing it, but the strategy is key. A small plug as well, because before I came on board to our organization, Canada Helps, our team saw a need. They went out and solicited some donations to build a course, and we have built Canada's first course on digital and social media for charities and fundraisers. We got it subsidized and sponsored, so it's really cheap to do. It's like $45, and it's the first course of its kind, and it's over 6 hours of content. So something great. We hope that will be of value to the sector.
Amazing. And if you both could share some of those, the links, Paul, you said you would, to share those users on Twitter you really admire, and Rory, those on Facebook, the charities on Facebook that are doing a great job. I think everybody would love to see what's working really well. It's now 8:30. I haven't had more questions on Twitter or Google Hangout. This conversation has been really incredible. I think it's kind of it may be a starting point. I certainly want to hold more virtual Maves meetups on different topics, whether it's social media or more the down and dirty of our fundraising work. Whatever it is, I'd love to do more of it. Are there any final thoughts from Rory and Paul on this before we close things off?
Oh, now I'm feeling the pressure to say something like really eloquent and like beautiful. You know what? I'm gonna end with something completely not eloquent at all. Who's doing this well? Where is she? She was just tweeting. Paul, you go, and then I'm gonna jump in after you.
You know what? The thing is listen for value first. Find what you need there. Start with the things that are close to you, all the publications you subscribe to, and then push out. I always say if you go after your intellectual celebrities, people that inspire you, one in fundraising, but two in the greater world, journalists, authors, that kind of thing. And our friend Brock Warner, he had a lot of executive directors on by saying once a week. Just log in, start to tweak once a week, then tweet once a day, and then you'll find your rhythm with it. And a lot of people have told me that's of value to them.
All right, so my last tip is going to be this, and this, thank you at Hava Goldberg for reminding me of this. Don't start your tweets by adding somebody unless you only want that person to see it. If you're doing something like at RoryJM says, do this on Twitter, start that tweet with a period, because if you start your tweet with an @ symbol, people think you're trying just to talk to Rory, and they won't show it to as many people as if it starts with a character other than an @ symbol. So that is my final piece of advice to you.
I've been wanting to use the effects this entire time, so I'm going to finish off with a crown and say thank you so much, everybody, for participating today. Maybe I'll put on a cat face. Amazing, and a crown. This was so much fun. Rory's got a halo, as she should.
Yes.
Well, we were playing around with these beforehand, so you may not have seen this feature, maybe you have and are not being silly with us. But no, I just want to say thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun. It's definitely a personal area of interest, and it's a journey. You know.
I'm sorry.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm sure Rory and Paul are still finding out new things every day, and I certainly am, and we're having fun doing it. And so engage with us, keep the conversation going. There are a lot of new people that are participating tonight that I haven't met with in person. So we're meeting new people already. So please keep engaging with us. Whoops, am I still on camera? Yep. And
plug our event, Maeve.
Oh yeah, should we promote our event?
We should.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, you kind of did a subtle one already. But no, when Rory J.M. Green on Twitter asks you if you want to do something cool together, you say yes first, and then ask what second. And that's what's happening. So Rory is coming through Kitchener-Waterloo in early April 7th specifically. She and I are holding an event in Kitchener with John Lepp and Jen Love, who we've also already referenced during this chat. We're doing a session on donor love. Whether you have a portfolio of 20 donors, or if you're working in annual giving and have direct response, direct mailings that are going to 2,000 plus people, there's a way to show them donor love. And we're going to talk to you on the morning of April 7th. Definitely check out either mine or Rory's Twitter feed for links and more information on that. And we'd love to see you there. It's a free event, 7:30 to 9 a.m. Tuesday, April 7th. And we've already got 15 plus people coming. So be sure to snatch up your free ticket before we get full. But yeah, any final remarks before we go? This has been a blast.
Thanks, everybody. Please keep tweeting us, and hopefully we'll get to meet in real life sometime soon.
And to actually engage and ask us questions and keep going. It doesn't have to end here. So follow and ask questions. We're always available. and happy to help.
And hey, thanks, Maeve. You're one of the most up for anything, inquisitive, curious, wonderful people that I know. I'm so honored that you asked me to be a part of this, and just so glad that we're doing cool things together. Such is the power of the internet, but also such is the power of just cool, awesome people coming together. So I'm going to give you a webcam fist bump.
Right back at you, and thank you. That's so sweet. Thank you both for joining me. You are my Twitter heroes, and I really shouldn't be the one with the halo here. But either way, thank you both so much for all your advice. I know that I was tweeting out quotes and everybody was, so let's keep the conversation going, and thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.